Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Hull City podcast, the 1904 Club from the Hull Daily Mail. And it's taken about a year, but we've replaced Prutz. He's not here today. He's gone, booted out. Kathryn Batte is here. Hello, Kathryn. How are you?
Hi, Baz. Not too bad, thank you.
Good. And the old time is here. Fletch, you all right? How was Scarborough at the weekend?
Scarborough was lovely. I was up in the northeast at Dunstan. They drew 1-1, so they do it all again tomorrow night. I'm doing a tribute to Tony Pulis again today, not just because I like standing up, but as we'll get on to, there's been a dismissal that's caught us a little bit from left field this morning with a certain Stephen Schumacher being dismissed.
And then Burns is there. Wait, no doubt he's got some quip for us relating to Schumacher and... Go on.
No, probably not. It's I find that Stoke one nuts. Actually, I don't get that at all. When Fletch mentioned it, I had a quick skeg at the form at the end of last season and the form this season. It's not bad. I mean, I think there was 1 defeat in 8 at the end of last season, and I was wondering whether this was the season that Stoke might finally get their act together. I don't know what's going on. It just looks like a moment of self-harm to those on the outside. But there you go.
And of course, the curious thing about that is that they've got Fleetwood in the League Cup third round on Tuesday night, tomorrow night. But of course, we go there on Friday in front of the Sky Sports cameras once again. Kathryn, it feels like, City are due. You need everything to go in your favour at the minute, and now they've sacked a manager. Potentially, that gives them a bit of a chance to impress a new man if he's in, if he's not watching on. I mean, Ryan Shawcross has been put in caretaker charge for the cup game against Fleetwood, but it's typical, isn't it?
Well, there's 2 bad things there, isn't there? There's a club sacking the manager, and the fact the game's on Sky Sports, and the 2 together is just destined to curse us. I think that's usually how it goes. But I suppose it depends whether the players liked the manager or not. Obviously, don't know an awful lot about what Stoke's camp was like and whether it'll actually work as a positive if maybe things weren't quite right there. But if the players quite liked him, it could backfire, and hopefully for us that's the case.
Fletch, the reaction to that, to the news, largely from what I've seen from Stoke City supporters, has been quite negative, a bit like the surprise and the shock, because this wasn't rumoured. There was no talk beforehand that Schumacher was going to lose his job before they lost at Oxford on Saturday, their 3rd defeat in 5. They've won the other 2, incidentally. A bit like the reaction to when Liam went. It caught 1 or 2 by surprise. And I think, a lot of Stoke fans are a bit shocked and disappointed by the news.
Yeah, but the only thing that I can really be drawn to as to why he's gone, given they've not had a wretched start to the season, is there a hangover period from last year? The hierarchy of Stoke City in a position where they just weren't happy, and they've gone into this season with something
Fletch,
in mind.
I told you I looked at the form. They'd 1 defeat in 8 in the last 8 games of last season.
But there must be something underlying. Are they unhappy like Hadjian was with the tactical style? There's very little that you can point to.
5-0 in the League Cup this season.
So
from the outside, doesn't make sense.
No, so you can't point to anything that suggests why they would get rid of him, Burnsy.
That's football. You get some strange decisions, as we all know.
And they've backed him in the transfer window. Obviously, we saw on deadline day they signed Cannon from Leicester, a player that City tried really hard to get in as well. And I just wonder, Burnsy, what does that do to the dynamic on Friday night? As it, if you go back 24 hours,
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't think you have to worry about Stoke beyond the usual stuff. Really, having seen what I've seen from City, I'd be worried what I saw on Friday night from City, and for the manager to come out and say it was the best performance of the season. I'm thinking, oh, hold on a minute. I thought they were more convincing at Leeds. I felt Sheffield United never really had to work that hard. I think you might have written they didn't need to get out of 3rd gear, really.
First gear, I wrote. I didn't feel.
Well, I just thought the nature of it and the whole thing. He picked him. I said before the game, I think in midfield, there's only Finley Burns that could tackle, and as it turned out, he did look like a fish out of water. He looked like a centre half playing in midfield, and he was just swamped. I thought they were really poor on Friday night. They got booed off, and I could see that. And I'm thinking, well, as I tweeted on Friday night, sort of time waits for no man. How much time has Tim Walter got? Tick tock, Tim. Basically, the clock is running. It wasn't convincing to me, and it's a big debate about it.
Kathryn, what have you made of the start of the season so far? Obviously, we've talked a lot on this show, and generally about the really difficult situation that Walter has come into. You know, he replaced, let's be fair, a very popular manager in Liam, who finished 7th. You know, we can debate all day long whether that was good enough or not, and with the quality of players he had, should he have done better? They still finished 7th, which was the highest finish for quite a long time, in fairness. You know, he didn't get much in the way of quality players. He started pre-season with a wafer-thin squad, largely made up of academy players. You know, a lot has happened late in August. He's had a lot of players come in. Where are you at, and what have you made of the start? And also, what did you think of that performance on Friday night?
I think the problem for Tim Walter is like you say, obviously a lot of his new signings came in after the season had already started. I'm not sure he knows what his best team is yet. And that's quite a big problem. But one thing that was really interesting to me was, so I was watching a game on Sky, and they showed us 5-minute clip where it was titled Hull Style, and it was a series of clips of us just giving the ball away in our own half. That's what Sky had decided our style of play was, and that's kind of been a theme of every game I've watched, is that every time we've got the ball in our own half, we look like presenting the opposition with a chance to score. And quite often, some of the teams we've played haven't been clinical enough. I remember that first game of the season. I mean, Bristol could have had about 10, 15 goals if they'd scored every single chance that we created for them. And that seemed to be the theme. And whether that's a case of the players just aren't quite, getting to grips with his style yet, whether they're just not learning from the mistakes that they've made previously. I know that, this style of play is meant to be really complicated, and that once it sort of works, it can be really good. My fear is, and I know we're still early into the season, my fear is that I don't know how long you have to give that style of play a chance for it to work. At what point you say, actually, maybe it's just not going to work. Maybe the players just aren't either good enough to play it, or they just can't get to grips with it, or maybe it just doesn't suit the Championship. Because Sheffield United basically said, the two players that spoke to Sky after the game, I think it was Hamer and I can't remember the other one now, they said they just trained counter-attacks all week. That's essentially what they did, because they knew what City were going to do. As soon as they lost the ball in the opposition half, you've basically got a free run to go and score. And again, Sheffield United probably should have had more than what they did for a team that's going to be, in the top 6. So unless they can sort that quickly, yeah, I mean, he's got a big job on his hands, Tim Walter, and I think the next 2 games are key. And if they don't go well, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't last much longer.
Fletch, you've because your life is so busy, you've spent your morning watching that 90 minutes back.
Fast forward. Compare it on normal.
You've obviously followed the commentary and the comments and God knows what else since Friday night. Having watched it back very recently, what's your assessment and of what you've seen?
The most generous phrase that I can use really is work in progress. But how much time do you have for that progress to transpire? When the first 15 minutes was incredibly telling, in the fact that City had the majority of the ball, it was bopped around the back 4, and the more time they took around the back 4, you noticed the midfield, 2 of them at least, Malem and Irma, push really far forward, and it leaves Finn Burns basically to wander into a nothing area of the pitch. So then they go wide and they try and get it forward. Sheffield United win the ball back, and then they burst on the counter. There was a moment in the 14th minute, the actual build-up to the corner, which ended up being the first goal of the game. There's a ball that's spotted into Irma, straight through the middle with pace. He turns and he's off down the middle. And that was the most effective Hull City were all game for me. There was zip about the play. They moved it forward quickly, and it helped connect those players that had pushed forward. Now, I don't want to put all the blame on the defenders, but if you can't get the ball out quick enough, the system, to me, at this period of time, doesn't work. There needs to be that zip. And bless him, I hope Charlie Hughes is feeling better. But that game for me, even though we haven't seen him yet in a black and amber shirt, from what I've seen from his style of passes at Wigan, that game was screaming out for him to get on the ball and move that ball into the midfield. The three in midfield that Tim Volter picked, for me, didn't work. Finn Burns was the defensive midfielder, and then the other two were trying to be box-to-boxes, and it didn't work, or they were pushing forward. So it looked like square pegs in round holes. And because of that, as Kathryn alludes to, Sheffield United, they've come up to Hull, they've set up to play a certain style of way, and it's worked an absolute treat for them. They didn't have to get out of first or second gear. They've won it at a canter. And then the other thing that really, boils my blood, 16 corners, 42 crosses. You've met someone in a black and amber shirt 7 times, and you've had 4 or 5 shots. That's not good enough. You can't have that level of negative productivity. And you feel sorry for people like Chris Bedia. He must have been thinking, when am I going to get this ball? Because he's doing everything right. He's making runs, etc. But he's never getting any service. So where's the threat in this style of play at the moment? Because it looks overcomplicated, long-winded, and it doesn't work.
Burnsy, on the subject of threat, I think it's now 14 or 15 games we've had of Tim, including obviously the pre-season games, which in fairness didn't go particularly well either. I'm generally always glass half full in my assessment of City. I'm struggling to see any threat when I think back to those games at all. There've been moments here and there, as Fletch said, the way they played through the middle for that chance that fun enough ended up being the first goal for Sheffield United was beautiful. But that's a one-off. There was a one or two other half moments. Obviously Malem hit the bar with almost an old-fashioned swing from Louis Coyle out wide, and Malem should have really scored when he crashed the header off the underside of the crossbar. But that was at 2-0. At 0-0, they're not creating enough. It's no coincidence that in no single game since he's been here have Hull City led a football match. I worry where the threat's coming from. I don't see. I've said this for weeks now. I don't see how they score goals, and in turn, I just don't see how they win football matches. They look a mess at times defensively. That first 15 minutes, the amount of people. I was getting a couple of messages in from people watching the game, around the country, friends and whatnot, and they were like, "What the hell are Hull City doing? What on earth is going on? What is this nonsense they're doing?" And maybe that's a bit strong, but and Kathryn raised the point about the style. I don't know what the style is, because I don't know what they're trying to do. I genuinely have no idea what the hell they're trying to do. And I'm sorry, but that's just me calling a spade a spade. I don't know from the goalkeeper through to the striker what the heck they're trying to do. Burnsy, help me out.
Well, if you expect me to answer what they're doing, I'm not sure myself. I know that they're dancing with the devil defensively every time they get the ball. It's overplayed. They're inviting risk, and for all the risk, there is no real reward. And they don't look like scoring. They had a couple of moments, but they're overplaying it. We talked last week on the pod about the amount of central midfielders they've got. Yet he picked a team that, and Fletch is right, he got the midfield wrong, but he had lots of choices. I could sort of see why Slater wasn't in it, and I know why Palmer wasn't in it, international duty. Having seen the Leeds game, I couldn't understand why Zambrano wasn't in it. I was quite impressed with him at Leeds. I thought there was something to build on. At least he'd got his foot in. And I'm not sure. I can't get my head around it. He said the football would be different, but it's not exactly pleasing. It's ponderous from the back. Too many risks at the back. I keep seeing Sean McLaughlin pop up in the number 10 role. He's been asked to do that. I don't understand why. What's the point? You've got number 10s. Let them do the jobs. It's all a bit nuts. And I mean, I'm still, because I have been all along, say he needs time. This situation is not of his making. That responsibility lies at the owner's door for me. But that time is running out because it's not convincing at the moment because people can't see what they're trying to do, and that is the concern for me at the moment. But they look better when Miller was on. They look better when Slater was on. They look better when Palmer was on. So, and I appreciate why Miller didn't start, and also why Palmer didn't start. So that would be a little bit of hope that I would cling to. That they'll be a bit more solid at Stoke. They'll have players in the right time, in the right places, and then let's see what happens. But I'm thinking he's got to the international break. There has to be something by the next international break that you think, aye, the penny's dropping. Otherwise, somebody's got a decision to make.
Kathryn, I'll come to you in a sec. Fletch, you were waving on, were you doing some dusting?
Yeah, I just wanted to read a couple of comments out based on the fact that Burnsy's alluded to how much time you give him. And there is a scale developing from the comments that we've seen. You've got someone such as Tom Butler, the Brandsholm Tiger. More time needed for his squad to get to grips with the style. But I suppose if we have double sessions for 2 weeks and look unhappy, Fletch. Cheers, Tom. Thanks for that. Solly says, no need to panic yet. Lost to 2 good sides and have only had our full squad for 1 game. Silly errors cost us on Friday. Tom Griffin, I wasn't impressed with at all on Friday night. It was a performance that didn't offer hope, and vast improvement is needed in the next games. Volta deserves more time to stamp his philosophy into the squad, but currently I fail to see what that is. Other people will read a couple out later. Some are saying give him the next 2 games. Some are saying he needs more time. Where's everyone at this moment in time? We're talking after probably one of the poorer games of the season. How much time is everyone giving Tim Volta to get this style of play down fully?
Kathryn?
I think the next 2 games are big, aren't they? Because Stoke and Cardiff, obviously Stoke, bit of an up and down start to the season, have just sacked the manager, and Cardiff are obviously not having a good time of it either. So I think those 2 games are key. If you're to lose both of them, I'd think he'd be on borrowed time, definitely. I think my fear is it's all starting to feel a little bit like the Shotter era, not quite as bad as that, but I'm not convinced that the team's very together from what I was seeing on Friday night. I don't know if there's maybe some sort of divide between the players that played under Liam Rossini and then the new players that have come in. The thing that struck me was the Alfie Gilchrist foul, which Tim Volta obviously went quite mad about, and I was quite surprised it wasn't a red card. It was quite a dangerous tackle and quite unnecessary. And I feel like a team that's together, you protect the players around you, and you kind of, I'm not saying they should have gone in and started shoving Gilchrist, but you would have felt like there might have been a bit of a stronger reaction from the players. And it was only Casey Palmer, who's been here for about 5 minutes, that seemed to be that bothered of the players that were on the pitch and actually got booked. Tim Volta obviously was furious, but the rest of them just sort of stood around as if they weren't really that bothered. And I think if a team's sort of together and they're sort of fighting for each other, you just wanted to see a little bit more passion. And I think that's going to be the key. If the players are actually behind the manager, then okay, yeah, give them a bit of time. If they're not behind the manager, that's always what lets you down, I think, and that's where maybe the trigger needs to be pulled quicker, because I don't know where it's going to improve if that's the case.
That's the reason I've got my hand up is because I think you're spot on, Kathryn. I've written down on my notes, are the players buying into it?
No, I don't think they are, Burnsy. We've talked about this before.
Well,
I don't think they are.
It's interesting because I think they're working. I think they're grafting.
Absolutely.
But are they buying into it? I mean, Fletcher's hinted before that it's not a happy camp. You said that the same. Give us,
Can I throw in a stat that I picked up before the game, and I'll just read it to you in full. And this is something that we've talked about before, and I've raised about they run around in circles with nothing to show for it. The only 2 players in the Championship this season to carry the ball 1,000+ meters are both Hull City defenders. Louis Coyle, 1.034 meters, and Alfie Jones, 1.003 meters. So you've got 2 players there that are, and what I would say from the start, work ethic and battling and all that sort of stuff, given. There's no issue there. They're trying. They're running, they're working hard, But for me, that stat there underlines everything we've been saying for a month. Is that they're working really hard. They're doing an awful lot of running. Sean McLaughlin's another one that can't be far behind that. For what? There's no reason. And Tim Walter goes on about his style, and now it's this and it's that. And I was watching, you watch a lot of the Premier League stuff. You see how Arsenal. I know I'm going miles ahead here in terms of level of quality, but you look how Arsenal are setting up, and you look how Manchester City set up. They all set up with a Jorginho or a Rodri, somebody, a gatekeeper in the midfield. He doesn't want that. He wants gaps in his midfield. He wants his defenders to play through and run into those gaps. Other teams are just taking the mickey, as we saw on Friday night. Sheffield United, yeah, okay, Premier League team, good side, not world beaters. They came, they barely got out of neutral. They just sat there and waited for City to give the ball away because they would just do it at will, and they just play through the space. I for the life of me, cannot understand how nobody else in football, the minds in football, have come up with this system before, and only Tim Walter is working with it, because it just is not going to work at this level. I'm sorry, it just is not going to work. And I think he needs more time. I think he's been dealt a difficult hand. He's obviously had a massive glut of new players, but I just don't. I think we could give it another 15 games. I don't think we're going to see anything different. I genuinely believe that, because the system is not cut out.
Would you change it now, then?
Would I change it now?
I would change it now.
Part of me, yes. I think part of me thinks before we get too far. And City, they slipped second. I know it's 5 games in, and we have to be careful not to jump too early with league tables. They slipped to second bottom of the table on Saturday. They've got, they went up. Look, they went up a place on Sunday because Portsmouth got beat, but they're in the bottom 3 after 5 games. And yes, this is new. Yes, we're in the season's infancy. Yes, it's a new manager and basically a new squad of players. But I really want this to work. But from watching the whole lot from the first day of pre-season to now, I don't see that how this improves unless the manager basically admits that his philosophy needs a tweak, that his philosophy is not going to get promotion from the Championship, and ultimately at the minute is not going to survive in the Championship, because the way he wants his team to play, for me, he's going to get found out, and this is going to be a real bad season unless he either accepts that he needs to make a change to his system, and I don't feel that he's a manager or a person that's got that within him, or they make a change. Fletch?
I think just to add off the back of that, I think responsibility needs to be taken to some of the players as well. I think because you've got a side that look undercooked tactically for what Tim Walter wants, there needs to be some blame attributed to some of those players on the pitch. And one of the things that stands out to me, and it stands out to some of the fans as well, is the constant passing around the back. There just doesn't seem to be that gumption. He talks about courageousness and trust and other bits and pieces, but we're not seeing an incisive ball enough that connects the midfield into the next part of the pitch. You've got them
because the midfield's not there, Fletch.
Yeah,
Fletch, the midfield's not there. If you're, that's down to the manager for not providing a midfield.
But is it down to the defence as well for not picking a ball out earlier and trying to get them on the way going the other way? That's the proposition I'm offering.
Yeah, but that comes from the manager's tactics. He wants them to play that way, doesn't he?
But I think
he must do.
But at the same time, I didn't see enough incisive passing from the back 4. That's what I'm trying to get at.
There's nobody to hit.
Then hit it
You've
long.
got one midfield who's not a midfielder dropping in. The one time they did it when Abdush dropped in, they had a nice move, as you've talked about it. But you look at the gap between the defence and the rest of the team, it's massive. Unless they're going to go long, and I presume he doesn't want them to play long, then, because look at McLaughlin, he's a fine long passer of the ball. He's a very good long passer of the ball. But he's not been asked to do that. He's not been asked to hit long diagonals or down the channel or anything like that. They've no option but to.
This is where my point on the players comes in. this is where my point on the players comes in. Are they so regimented they can only do this style and they're being told to do this style? Or do you have that, that nous about you think this isn't working, I need to do something about it and then see if it comes off?
No, it's the modern game. They were the same under Liam. They're very prescribed. It's this is what you do in this situation. This is what you do in this situation. I'm not convinced that in that area of the field they want anything off the cuff. I don't know, Kathryn.
Yeah, I don't think. I think it's twofold. I think it's partly that maybe the manager's just not given them the tools to make it work. And I thought the midfield was a bit of an issue. I don't really know what's going on with Zambrano in terms of long term. I know he's obviously got that potential ban hanging over him, and I thought the fact that they signed Al Zait, if that's how you pronounce his name, was quite interesting. So whether that's something that Tim Walter's looking at as to why he's not playing him, I don't know. But yeah, at least with Liam, I think the players kind of had an idea of what they were doing in terms of, sometimes maybe they were passing it round the back a little bit too much, but you could they were drilled to know what they were doing, and they had an out ball. They had Seri there, didn't they? They had Tyler Morton there. There was those midfielders to come and pick the ball up and then turn, and that's probably what we've not got at the minute. And that's kind of what felt like was missing on Friday when you're asking kind of Sean McLaughlin to push up the midfield and collect the balls in the areas where Seri and Morton were last season. And he's just not going to be able to do it. Like I don't really know how you expect him to. And obviously they're missing Jacob Greaves, who was probably the one defender that could have maybe carried the ball a little bit further up the field as well. If there was any one of the defenders that maybe that system would have worked with, maybe Greaves would have been the player, and maybe Charlie Hughes, when he's fit again, will fit into it slightly better. But like Baz was saying, I think either Tim's going to have to accept that his system needs to be adapted slightly, or he might pay the price back with his job. I think sometimes managers can be too stubborn and they don't want to change anything. And actually, I think there's a lot to be said for admitting, okay, maybe in the Championship maybe in Germany it might have worked a little bit differently. Maybe in the Championship in England it's not going to work. I need to change it slightly.
I think if you look, and again, I know I'm talking about a completely different level here, but if you look at Mikel Arteta's got a very defined way of playing with Arsenal, but he acknowledged going to Spurs on Sunday afternoon that he, with absences and players unavailable, like the likes of Ødegaard and Declan Rice, he had to change it up. And he went there and he sat in. He played relatively defensive and waited for that one moment to get the set play, and they scored a goal. Arteta's got that ability to go, yeah, these are my principles. I want to play total football. I want to play pass, and score. We all want to do that, and that's the ideology that most football managers have. But he's also got the common sense, and he's not arrogant enough to think that actually we're just going to go and do that anyway. We're going to change the way we play. We're going to get Jorginho to sit deep and basically run the midfield, and we're going to stop them from playing. They can have all the possession they want. They can have all the ball. They can knock it around the goalkeeper. They can play along the halfway line. But as soon as they come close to our box, we're going to close all those passing lanes. We're going to block them off, and we're going to keep them at arm's length. And we'll wait. When that chance comes, be it from open play or a set piece, we know Spurs can't defend from corners. We'll take our chance. And lo and behold, I think that's what, if Walter's going to stay in the job, which at the minute I think it's looking dicey. If he's going to stay in the job, he's got to accept that his system in the Championship is not going to work unless he makes subtle differences and gets his team far more. He didn't. We asked him in the press conference afterwards. We said, do you need to tighten up? Do you need to tighten up at corners when you're attacking corners? Do you need to tighten up, or do you need to tighten up when you've got players running through and you're leaving big gaps? No, I don't agree. No. And I'm sat there thinking that's a concern for me, that the manager, he just goes, we need to be better. We need, but that for me, that's a worry, that the manager doesn't think that they need to tighten up from corners when they're attacking corners. And he actually said in the press conference, we've had 15 or 16 corners. You've not mentioned that, but if we'd have only had one corner, you'd mention. But there wasn't the time. In fairness, we get a very limited amount of time with him. But you've got to be tight. He's got to be tighter. They're far too open, Burnsy.
They were. of the 16 corners, there were 2 memorable ones.
Yeah,
Weren't
yeah.
the rest were forgettable. But the unfortunate thing is the 2 memorable ones were the ones that Sheffield United scored from.
And they've got to be tougher,
It's look at the scoreboard, Tim. Look at the scoreboard. I've read an interview, I think in the Sunday Times yesterday, or I can't remember where I read it, but I read it about Postecoglou at Spurs. He doesn't like this look at the scoreboard mentality. And I'm thinking, what? Always, I had this argument with some numpty on Twitter on Friday night, and he's going, well, you said they had no control of the game. I said, well, they didn't really. He said, we had 16 corners and 67% possession or something like that. And I was thinking,
but what did we do with it?
Look at the scoreboard. Look at the scoreboard. Forget all the stats. That's the only one that matters. And the 16 corners, they did sod all with them. And that would be a concern.
Kathryn, sorry, just one sec, Fletch. Kathryn, Gazzaralda raises this. He raised this on social media after the game. The most disappointing part for me is Sheffield United, like Leeds, really aren't anything, and then goes on to say about it being a weaker division. And that's one of my frustrations. Is people look at it where they go, well, oh yeah, but we lost 2-0 at Leeds. They're a good side. Sheffield, he had a really easy, probably the wrong word, but gentle introduction to the Championship. Bristol City at home, not great. Plymouth away, new manager bounce, but not great. Millwall at home, really should have beaten them, not great. Leeds, yes, Ellen Road's a difficult place to go at any time. We know that. They're not what they were last season. They're still in transition. Sheffield United have come down. Okay, start to the season unbeaten. But as we've already said before, they didn't have to get out of barely neutral to win the game. They just waited for City to make the errors and pounce. Is that the frustration as well? That the 5 games they've had, and also Sheffield Wednesday's reserves in the cup, they've not played anybody that's amazing yet. They've not come up against a Burnley who prior to the weekend were scoring for fun, or even the teams of the quality of last season.
Yeah, and exactly all of those teams, we created about 7 or 8 chances for them to score, and if they would have been better, we probably would have lost more of those games. I think maybe only Millwall where they didn't seem to have as many chances, and even then, I can remember a few popping up that we created. So that's the concern, isn't it? And I think Plymouth, when we played at Plymouth away, I don't think Plymouth are not a good side, but it seemed like quite an even game based on the chances that we created for them. It's a concern, and I think again, not comparing it too much to the Shotter era, but it's starting to feel a little bit like a team of individuals again, rather than a team with a system and playing for each other like we had under Rossini. It was sort of like we went from having a collection of individuals who were sort of playing for themselves under Shotter, changed it and got Rossini in, and he built a team and a system. And then we've gone back the other way again. It sort of feels like there's no real togetherness in that team. And when that second goal went in on Friday, it was just sort of like, shrug the shoulders and sort of like, well, there's another game gone.
I saw the replay of the first goal, and I really like Abdush as a player. I think he's got an obvious amount of quality, but his tracking back was nothing short of a disgrace. If you watch it, Gustavo Harmer actually he starts the move on the edge of the Sheffield United box, probably 10 yards closer to the United goal than Abdush, and he ends up scoring the goal. And by that point, Abdush has probably moved about 5 yards. He's not even in his own half tracking back. They've lost the ball. They should all be hell for leather trying to get back. Yeah, Balumi, you feel he's got to be stronger in this league. They need players that are stronger, and that's a tough baptism of fire for the kid. But Abdush, I'm sorry, that is embarrassing. That is an absolute disgrace, and the manager should be calling him out on that.
Yeah, well, exactly. But he's not there to tackle, is he? I keep coming back to tackling. Can I
try and get chase back and try and even give away a foul outside the penalty box? You've got to do something. Yeah,
no, listen, I'm not going to disagree with you. Can I sort of raise this point and move the discussion on a little bit on the 1904 club? Because Kev from Hull said, remember that Thomas Frank won only one of his first 10 games at Brentford with their fans paying for his dismissal. They're a bit happier now. And I was going to raise the point today of Irola at Bournemouth, who I think it took him
Barker
10
Norwich
league games.
as well.
He had a couple of League Cup wins, but it took him 10 games to win a league game. And I know the Premier League's a different standard and harder to get a result, maybe. But does that offer hope? The fact that, good managers, I mean, both exceptional managers, sometimes it takes time for for things to bed in. Or is Tim Walter, De Boer at Crystal Palace? Where are you at?
Go on, Fletch.
I think the numbers of what he's done previously speak for themselves in the sense that he has been successful. But I think it's a concoction of things around him that are making things so difficult. And one of the comments that I wanted to raise before Burns raised it was from someone called IG Wright. I was just looking for it now because I've just skipped off the page.
Did you say Haji Wright?
No, not Haji Wright. No. IG Wright. He says, I think Walter's a bit hamstrung by getting all these players so late in the day. He's now literally on a trial by fire. He's got the core of a decent team, but he's got to find it, and that might take another 5 games, by which point they might be up the creek. And I wouldn't want to be in Tim Walter's shoes, where you've been given a whole host of players and you've suddenly got to knit them together in the line of fire of an actual league season. He hasn't been given that opportunity because of the way recruitment was done over the summer to bed in an 11 that he can feel confident with going into match day 1.
No, he hasn't.
I still feel the pace is behind the rest.
And that's a great point. Absolutely great point. But there comes a point where you have to almost shut up shop and go, right, okay, while we get through this difficult period of all these new players, and a lot of them don't speak English or it's not great, and they've come from abroad and they're trying to settle in, and that's off the pitch, that's difficult as well. The likes of Bellumi, Zambrano, obviously, and he's got his thing hanging over him, Zambrano, Puerta. There's a few that have come in. Betty is another one that have come in from abroad. For the next month, we're just going to have to be a bit more pragmatic. We're going to have to play. We're going to have to sit maybe 2 6s and just protect things and try and get a goal on the, rather than being so blatantly out of it and just getting beat. Yeah, okay, they have only lost. Somebody said to me on Friday, but we've only lost 2 games. Yeah, but you've drawn the other 3, and in those 5 games, at no point in any of those games have you ever looked like winning the game. So that's the concern. Just shut up shop, be a bit more pragmatic, play, short-term game. On this occasion, the short-term, not pain as such, but trying to get a result, and then give yourself a platform. The trouble is, in no games are they giving themselves a platform to go and win the game. Millwall, yes, was 0-0, but they never looked like winning the game. And as me and Kathryn just said, that early on, Watmore and Honeyman were carving out all kinds of chances against better opposition. They'd have got beat, as we've seen against Leeds and Sheffield United. But they're not giving themselves a solid footing in the game, a platform to build on, and then to go and win the game in the last 20 minutes. I just think in this kind of difficult period where he's trying to settle into life in England as well, and the culture and all that sort of stuff, and some of his players are, just be a bit more pragmatic. I think that would be better. This league is just going to eat you up and spit you out and laugh at you, and that's basically for me what's happening.
Yeah, sorry, I would agree. No, it's all right. I do feel he's gone way too gung ho, and he's tried to put his philosophy down straight away, and it's not working. There's moments where they're progressing. You can see things like movement and whatnot going forward, but the defence are still massively exposed, and that's leading to errors.
David said this on social media on Friday night, not enjoying the style of football, a total shambles. Curtis Davis, friend of the show and absolute legend of the football club, was doing the game for Sky Sports on Friday night, and he said some really interesting stuff. Actually, did Curtis? I think his parting comment was, they've sacked a manager to get more attractive football. I don't think anybody would be leaving the MKM Stadium having enjoyed watching that. Kathryn, fair?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of what we're saying in terms of, like, at least with Liam, you could see the players knew what they were doing. It didn't always work, but it didn't always work, but they knew what they were doing. I think the games I've watched, I'm not convinced the players know what they're meant to be doing. They just sort of end up in places that they shouldn't be.
And ultimately, I don't think Burnsy, and we've talked about this before, I don't think they enjoy it. I don't think they're enjoying it. That is reflected in their on-pitch demeanour, the way they're playing. as Kathryn touched on earlier on, about, when Omer was battered, and Gilchrist should have been sent off. Yes, Walter rightly not happy with that. But I'm just speaking from personal. I'm not trying to rile anybody or anger anybody or cause a what storm. I'm just saying it as I see it, and I don't think those players are enjoying it. I really don't. Hand on heart, I think back to times last season. It wasn't great. The home form, some of the home performances were like you want to poke your own eyeballs out. But the players had a plan. There was a plan. You could see what they were trying to do. It didn't always work, but there was a structure to the team. There was a plan, and the players actually looked happy. They looked content this season. I just don't think that is the same. So I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that we go to Stoke on Friday night and get a win, and suddenly everybody's got a smile on their face, because that would make such a difference if they could find a way to win a game. The mood would be so different. Maybe a bit of momentum. The dressing room would feel not vindicated necessarily, but at the minute, because they're not winning, it's hard for players to go, well, actually, I believe in this system, when at the minute it's getting us nowhere. Burnsy?
Well, gone are the days when I'm chatting to players, but it's nobody's saying in any interviews I've seen or heard that they're unhappy.
Well, they're not gunny though, are they? This is the modern football.
Well, no, I accept that. But is anybody saying it away from the microphone without naming names?
I think there's a general feeling of frustration. Now, look, naturally, the players they're professionals. They want to win. They haven't won a game. Christ, was it? I think the last away win was for the players that have been here all along was Coventry in late April. The last home win was QPR in early April. It's no.
They haven't led a game since Coventry, Baz.
Say again?
Either they haven't led in a match since Coventry.
No, and they don't look like it. And and fans will get, some fans were slagging off other fans for booing the other night, and I can completely understand it. Look, for the last God knows how many years, Hull City fans have been going to the MKM Stadium and at times watching absolute dross, and coming away and not seeing their team win. They haven't seen their team win at home since beating QPR in April. That's a long time ago. And there's been management changes and player changes, but ultimately the paying fan is going and wanting to see their team play well and ultimately win the game, and they don't do it. And so I can completely understand it at God knows what time on a Friday night when it's not overly warm. Friday night after a long week at work, another game where they've been outplayed, they've not looked like scoring, and they've lost. It's understandable. People pay their money, and sometimes I think that booing teams is counterproductive. It doesn't help. But in this situation, for Hull City fans who have seen, bar a few games last season, for the last 4 or 5 years, obviously the absolute dross at the MKM Stadium. The one season where they won a few games, they weren't allowed to go because of COVID, and they won the bloody league. So I'm not surprised. I've got to be honest. I'm not surprised.
Do you think, Baz, that Adjun's got a plan B though if he has to sack Walter if it goes wrong? Because he was so kind of adamant in, this is the man that I want, and it took a little bit of time for them to bring him in, didn't they? But if he goes right, the bottom of the league or something, still not won a game, I'm going to have to get rid of him. Has he got a plan B, or is it going to have to be like an interim? When he got rid of Shotter, you're going to have like an Andy Dawson in charge until he finds somebody else.
Fletch, you want me to take that before you raise your point? Or
I was just going to add on to Kathryn's point that when I made the point when they were about to appoint him, Walter, I did ask the question of what is plan B if Walter doesn't come, because no other manager was linked.
Well, that's the acid question, isn't it? And I think Adjun has boxed himself. Got to be honest, I think he's boxed himself into a really difficult corner, because he's got rid of a manager after finishing 7th. Most teams after finishing 7th build on that and try and go and finish 6th. He's put his neck on the block. Basically, he's taken a massive gamble by sacking Liam, and for the reasons that he's come out and very publicly stated for the style of football. I don't know where he goes next. I've got to be honest. It would concern me if or when Walter inevitably does fall on his sword, what he does. Does he go, he appointed Shotter, calamity, didn't work. Obviously, Dawes came in, then appointed Liam, solid pair of hands, got the club moving in the right direction, good recruitment generally, had a style of play, everybody was pulling in the same direction, gone. He's now put his neck on the chopper to appoint Tim Walter because of his apparent style of play. We've not seen it yet. And if he sacks him, does he go for? I don't know. It's a good question, and it's a really difficult one. And it will be it will be the biggest test of his ownership, I think, so far, because fans will be criticising him again for sacking Rossini, bringing in Walter, and then sacking him, and the person he brings in next. And so I in answer to your question, I don't know. I don't know if he. I would like to think as well organised clubs have. They always have an exit strategy and a plan in place, don't they? When they have managers that they look at, they're looking further down. You think of the Brighton model. Well, we bring in a manager, and if that doesn't work or he gets poached, he goes somewhere else, we have the next guideline. Swansea were very good at doing that a few years ago. They had the club style of play that they played from under twos all the way to seniors. And if the manager went, Brendan Rodgers went, they brought in somebody else. Martinez went, they brought in somebody else that could play that, so they didn't need to rip it up and start again. My worry is that if Walter was to go, does that next manager come in and go, well, actually, I don't want that player. I don't want that player. We're going to have to rip it up again next summer. That's my concern. So I just don't know where he goes. Does he go foreign again, or does he look for a manager that's well versed in the chat? Obviously, somebody like Schumacher's out of work now. Does he go for somebody that knows the league? It's a great question, Burnsy. You were waving.
Yeah, I was. Brad Denton put this on Twitter to us. Adjan has to give him time. If he were to sack him early on, it just makes the whole situation amateurish and embarrassing for Adjan, which I doubt his ego would like. And I think he needs time, but I do think it's running out in terms of what we're saying and seeing. And I'm not sure he's helping himself. But one thing strikes me. Remember when we did the 1904 club, at the new Walton Street club, when Tan came along, and Tan said, if we make a mistake, we rectify it quickly. And I think there are enough question marks now to say, has Tim Walter been a mistake? I still think, even though that question's there, that he needs time. But my sort of timescale now, which I think it probably always was, is the second international break. 10 games. Where are they at? Does it look as though it's coming together? Because it's been really difficult in terms, because the squad's not been there, and that's been down to Adjan to not deliver for him to give him a chance. So I think whatever happens, and I appreciate circumstances might dictate if they get battered in the next two games, but I'm still of the opinion it needs time. And I'm with you. I said at the start of the season, I'd shut up shop. I'd just play for a point. Come out the first few games unbeaten with a point every time. Just build it till the players get to know it and everything like that, till you've got a reasonable squad. And I still think that's the methodology I'd like to see. Whether we'll see it or not, because he's wants to play the way he plays.
And Kathryn, that's the thing, isn't it? The next, I'm firmly in the camp of he needs time. I wouldn't sack him today. I don't think that. I still think the guy needs to be given time until, and I'm with you, Burnsy, that let's reassess at the international break. However, the caveat to that, Kathryn, if they go to Stoke and get beaten, then you've got the Cardiff game, and God knows what situation Cardiff will be in by that point. So far, they've lost 4. Their only draw was against Swansea. Their only goal was against Swansea. There's a fair chance that Bullet will be out of a job by the time they come a week Saturday. If they were to lose those 2 games, suddenly that international break, does that get brought forward a tad?
Potentially. I think naturally you think the international break gives you a bit of time to go and think, what are we going to do? Are we going to put an interim in? Are we going to bring somebody in? Are we going to have time to find someone? But I agree with you in terms of those next 2 games are the key. If they were to lose both of them, I think that the pressure really would be mounted on him then. If they got QPR on a Tuesday night after
QPR on a Tuesday and then away at Norwich, and then you come back to games against Sunderland and Burnley.
And I'm just thinking about the record at QPR away, because I've been at the last couple of games there, and that's never a good one for us. So I mean I think the international break is one that makes sense, but if you lose the next 2, the 2 after that look even harder than the 2 that they've just played, if that makes sense. So if you lose the next 2, I wouldn't put him past them to lose the 2 after as well, and then suddenly it's 6 defeats in a row. and then I think he really would have to go. But I just think it depends on what I was saying before, and what Adrian, if he's got any sort of plan B, if he's kind of got anything in his mind of, if it goes wrong, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not convinced that he does, to be honest.
Fletch, what I think my feeling on it, as well as like we've just said about the giving it a bit of time, is if you can see shoots of promise, if you can see that there's a plan, there's a structure, that the players are buying into it, that the players are comfortable, the players are happy, you're getting the best out of them, and that actually this short-term pain which is what we're going through, you can see light at the end of the tunnel. Then you say, look, yes, results aren't great, but everything underneath that is good, and it will just take time, and the results will start to come. The process, as the buzzword is in management and football now, the elements of the process are in the right place, and it will click. If we're seeing all those things, then unequivocally you say we stick with it, because you believe that results will turn. Middlesbrough, what was it? On the September the 23rd, they were bottom of the table. They hadn't won a game. They beat Southampton on September the 23rd, which was their 8th game of the season. And then obviously we know they went on and they came very close to getting in the playoffs. There was clearly a process at Middlesbrough. They missed out in the playoffs. Lots of change in the dressing room over the summer, and the manager had been there a period of time and understood the league, and they got their benefit. If with Walter you're seeing those shoots of promise and shoots of recovery, then you say we stick with it. Even if we lose against Stoke and draw against Cardiff, you stick with it because you feel that there is a plan going forward, that things will improve. Do you see that being the case, though?
It's very hard to see it. The one thing is that we haven't seen is how do they behave on a pitch when they lead a game of football? Because then what do you do if you're in the 85th minute and you're leading 1-0 away at Stoke on Friday night? Does he then tuck in? Does he then play for
cash in?
that?
I think what you do is you cash in if you've got a bet on it. Got to see it out.
But we don't know what
the
situation is when they go in front. For me, you give it, if they don't win the next 2 games, you've got that international break to allow these new signs that have come in later in the day to try and bed in, and then you give him 2 or 3 more. And if there's still no sign of improvement, then for me, you say thanks, Tim, for all you've tried to do, but that's it. But I can't really see with much clarity much promise.
And that's the concern, Kathryn, isn't it? That I think we're all in a similar. We all want it. We all want to give him time. We all advocate that Championship managers don't get the time. They need to be given time. But in order to earn that time and have that time, there has to be a reason. And I think a lot of fans as well, having been vociferously behind Tim to a point and wanting him to do well and wanting this attacking brand of football, ultimately, because you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see you see it with your own eyes. People, I think that the Sheffield United game was a turning point for a lot of people, because a lot of people had seen bits here and there, maybe been to the odd game, but if they weren't at the game on Friday night, they were watching it on the telly box. And I think everybody largely saw a performance that, there were 1 or 2 moments in it that give you promise, but the fact that a fairly average Sheffield United team, they've got probably the best midfielder in the Championship in Harmer, but didn't have to break sweat to win a game so comfortably. A fairly average Leeds team didn't have to break sweat to win the week before. And the three games before that, the first game they didn't have the squad. They had more at Plymouth, and then in turn more against Millwall. But again, I think they had 2 shots on target on Friday night. One of which was Omer's free kick from distance. The other one was Balumi after he'd made an absolute hash of a corner. It came back out to him and he swung it from the edge of the box, or from wide out on the right. 2 shots on target again. And they've had 2 shots on target in pretty much every game. You're not going to win many games if you're only having 2 shots on target, and both of those are from speculative efforts, are you?
No, and I think the one position, and I don't actually think this is the main issue for the reasons they've lost, but the one kind of position we felt like they were crying out for that they needed to sign was a striker. And I know they've brought in Beddy, and I know they've brought in Mason Burstow, but I still think they probably needed another striker, having let Oscar go. And And we just seem to sign midfielders and goalkeepers. I mean, we've got 4 goalkeepers there. And I still don't know who the number 1 is. Like Pandor, to be fair to him, I know he had a bit of a dodgy pre-season, but hasn't done that badly in the league games. But I thought we'd signed the guy from Brighton, Rush, to be the number 1, and he's obviously not played yet. And I don't think Tim knows his best team. And I think until he sort of works out what his best team is, I don't think they're going to get anywhere really. And to be fair, I don't know an awful lot about Tim's past career and how successful he was. I know Fletch was saying he's sort of done all right in the past, but are we certain his style of play has been that successful in Germany? Like, have we kind of got a blueprint? Has he won an awful lot in his career before he came? I just don't know if it's like, if I could sort of see, all right, we did it at this team and this team were really good and it got promoted and they went on to do that, you could sort of say, okay, well, at least he's had that history of it working out for him before, and you know if you give him time it works. But from what I can kind of see, I'm not 100% certain that he's kind of had that success in the past.
Burnsy, do you want to take that one?
No, I'm trying. He didn't get Hamburg promoted, did he? He got them close.
He scored a lot of goals, 74 in one year, I think, which was something we talked about with Henrik back in the summer.
Yeah,
but conceded a lot of goals as well. And you can see why.
Yeah, Robert Holt makes a couple of points. I think people forget the last 2 games we were basically playing a Premier League team and a Championship final team. Can't judge.
I'm not sure we were though. If you look at Sheffield United team.
Yeah. We were the better team for long periods and were undone by an error and a quick counter. I don't agree with that, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. Obviously looked better, says Robert, when Miller came on, and think Palmer and Slater added something in midfield when they came on too. For me, movement was a lot better than on Friday night, and if we were just more clinical in front of goal, we'll win more than we lose. Well, that's optimistic. I'm not sure there's much more we can say about its future and things like that. I don't know whether there's anything you wanted to touch on. How are we on appendixes? How long's Hughes out for?
Well, I guess
looked at the NHS. I looked at the NHS website this morning. The recommendation after I take it he's had his appendix removed. Take 1 or 2 weeks off work at least, and don't do any vigorous exercise. So unless he's superhuman, we'll probably not see him until after the international break. I could be wrong. And Kathryn mentioned the keeper. What's the story with him? Because I was expecting him to play on Friday night. Is there any update?
Yeah, he picked up an unspecified bruise, but right. Walter thinks he'll be back for Friday night. So yeah, I like you expected Rushworth to come in, and obviously as you quite rightly said yourself, Miller and Palmer were not involved from the start because of all the travel. But I would suspect going to Stoke Friday, you'd want to be starting Palmer. I just think he got the midfield wrong, and they did. Palmer did all right when he came on. He's a player that you'd probably start with, and Miller on the other side. You know, maybe you see, it's funny, isn't it, how people see it? Because I thought Kamara did all right first half. He looked to get at people. He tried to create. Yeah, the final ball let him down at times. But Walter was quite critical of him in his post-match press conference when I asked him why he took him off at half-time, and also Giles, who hasn't looked great all season, if we're brutally honest. They probably looked a bit more solid with Drame at left-back, if truth be told. But yeah, Rushworth is expected to be back for the weekend. But again, does he bring him? I don't see him bringing him in. I think he'll stick with Pandor because I think he thinks that Pandor's done all right, has improved. But it does feel like the situation we're in where, you know, he's waiting for Pandor to make an absolute ricket and then make a change, which I never think's a great place. We had it with Liam last year, didn't he? He signed Orsop and he came out and he basically took Ingram out of the team, and he said, look, I wanted to make the change. Ryan's my man. I didn't want to wait for Matt Ingram to make a mistake because that's not the way to do it. I wanted to have conviction with my decision, and I think that's what it needs here. Rushworth is a better goalkeeper than Eva Pandor. So if you've signed him on loan, make a decision, be bullish and stick by it, Fletch. Yeah,
you've got to play him if you've learned him. Otherwise, what's the point in having him in the building? Simple as that.
Yeah. Kathryn, just quickly, this is something I wanted to raise about, it's going to sound to some people like this is a tin pylon, and it's not at all. It's a genuine question. His antics on the touchline have raised plenty of debate. You know, he's an emotional guy. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and there's lots to like about that. But he's very often, I remember I can't remember what game it was early this season. Louis Coyle passed the ball out of play. He tried to make a pass, got it wrong, and he played out of play. And Tim threw his arms up in the air and turned around and started, gesticulating to Julian Hubner, one of his coaches. Is that a good thing for players to see on the touchline when you're trying your best and you make an error and the manager's lobbing his arms around in frustration and like a cold spring?
No, it's a bit Bruno Fernandes, isn't it? Sort of throwing your arms up in the air when someone's made a bad pass. I don't mind managers being animated on the touchline if it's to give instructions about kind of where maybe they've played a pass and it's not quite gone right and they're trying to give the sort of instructions. But yeah, I'm not a massive fan of arms in the air sort of in frustration at something somebody's done, because that just feeds onto the players onto the pitch. Generally, I don't mind managers being quite, like, as I say, like animated, but I just think it depends on the situation. I'd rather see them be animated at something the opposition's done or at the referee or something rather than their own players. I don't think that's ever a good place to be.
Burnsy, are we making more of this because they haven't won a game and we wouldn't probably say anything if they'd won 4 of the last 5? Would we just kind of let it roll?
Yeah, but that's the nature of it. You're there to win games. It's just the signs of encouragement aren't there at the moment. They're not there, and people are struggling to get their head around it. It's all about winning games. And you go back to look at the scoreboard. Look at the scoreboard. That's ultimately what matters. And we're not seeing the signs of progress. At least I don't think we are anyway. I thought they were worse than Leeds on Friday night.
Fletch, just final thoughts, because I know we're pushed for time. In
a sentence, play for results. Don't play to entertain first. Play for results first. Do what you got to do to win. Brilliant. Kathryn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd probably echo what Fletch said. Just win, just go and win at Stoke, and then everything will be all right. The pressure will die down. Tim will probably start to feel a bit better. Just go and win. I don't care how you do it. Just go and win a game.
I think that's a fitting way to end. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching the 1904 Club from the Hull Daily Mail, the Hull City podcast. Of course, hopefully we will see 3 points at the weekend and things will just potentially, for a week at least, start to calm down. 3 points in the bag, get out the bottom 3 and we can start to look up. Plenty of build-up to come, of course, over the next few days. If you are travelling to the Potteries on Friday night, safe journey down there and back, and we will be back again soon.